I'm Allie Zendrian, Editor-in-Chief of Brand News, and this is the Financial Services News You Might Have Missed podcast. This is where I uncover news gems that may not have gotten their full chance to sparkle and shine them up a little bit. I'm joined by my financial advisor and my co-host, Brandon Galisi of Galisi Financial. Brandon, how's your week going?
My week's going pretty well. Had a piece of content kind of go off, something about the one big beautiful bill, specifically from a tax perspective. And it was, for me at least, one of the first pieces of content that has gained this level of traction that wasn't something that was more meme based, which is fun and funny, but doesn't really necessarily add value. Or we've talked before, a lot of 401ks aren't scams is what I'll post, and those will get traction. I'm like, why do those get traction? So this one for me was like, oh, this is actually valuable content explaining something that people want to see that hopefully can add some level of value to their life where they can understand how the permanent tax brackets will be working. And got over 100,000 views. I'm like, holy moly. Now, granted, that does not result in clients or necessarily new business, but at least gives me a good tailwind on, okay, I should probably keep posting some content about this tax piece, this one big beautiful bill, and how that can impact someone's financial life. So it's been a good week.
Yay. Well, so we're going to talk more about financial influencers in a little bit. So everybody, get your popcorn. But also, so when you were saying, why does like the 401k scams do so well? Among the reasons, so the fact that it's 401ks are a scam, like if you have a 401k, you're like, oh my God, are they a scam? What do I do now? So I think that there are a few of those elements that make it do really well, on top of the fact that it's you.
I agree, because I think too, like, again, when people use such strong language, oh, 401ks are a scam, you're right. It's just really punchy. It's a hook. And it gets people in, but then oftentimes then that influencer goes and shares very inaccurate and misleading, whether intentionally or not, misleading information. But again, we'll get into it. I got so many fancy feelings today, and looking forward to it.
Fanciest of the fancy feelings.
The fanciest of the feelings today. Absolutely.
Good. Well, so our first piece of news, though, is going to be about financial literacy, as you and I both really enjoy discussing that and the spreading of financial literacy. The University of Phoenix and Goalsetter nearly finished its 10-part financial wellness webinar series. So the piece that's coming out next, its 9th part, is entitled How to Comparison Shop and Save. This series is designed to help people establish a budget, categorize expenses, and try to save on interest. For anybody who's interested, some of the past webinars, which also include an opportunity for Q&A, are about 5 tips to stop overspending, the importance of credit scores and how to improve them, and paying for school and scholarships. I was curious what you think about this opportunity. I thought that it was particularly interesting, the fact that it's with University of Phoenix, A, because of the breadth that they have, and B, that then it's related to college and to learning, but would love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, well, one, clearly they love their alliteration, because almost every single one of those is a mouthful. It's not just you. Like, though, I'm thinking in my mind, I'm like, yeah, that's a pretty tough cluster of words to share all in the same sentence there. But no, I think it's great. And I think the big reason too, and we've talked about financial literacy before, but especially with, at least I read in the article, a lot of adult learners, now they're very close to, let's say they learn something about budgeting. Well, they can almost, since they're adults, apply that immediately. Where I think that is where financial literacy to even college students or high school students, again, I think very helpful, but sometimes tough to learn something. And if you're in high school or even in college, oftentimes you might not be making much money. It's all discretionary income, even if you are having money. So it's harder to learn a principle and then apply it quickly. Whereas I could see this with the University of Phoenix. They're going to go to these different workshops and learn something. And I mean, no, a lot of people still will not do it, to be fair, because we're human beings and we're not always good at following through. But for those that do, they're going to be able to instantly apply these concepts day one if they would want to. And I think that's one of my favorite types of learning. You learn something and then you somehow apply it in a shorter time frame. And then it's typically you're going to remember it much more easily compared to, oh yeah, I remember learning something about credit cards when I was 17 years old. Like, that's, again, still helpful, but I really like this concept with adult learners and them using this. I think that's very, very beneficial.
Yeah, I absolutely agree there. I thought it was also interesting. So yes, with the alliteration about the comparison, shop, and save, and some of those other pieces. So I think the fact that we're talking about overspending and how to save on things, the real life application of it, of even if you were younger, do I want something cheaper on Amazon or do I want to pay a little bit more? Like, I'll think about that in real terms. So I thought I appreciated the fact that it was so realistic.
Yeah. And again, very, very practical. It's not, hey, here's how to construct a perfect portfolio. It's relevant things of how do you save money in real life? Like in your example that you just gave there, like that's so practical that, again, even if someone doesn't remember everything, likely something whenever they're shopping on Amazon or even at the store the next time, maybe something comes up and like, oh, I could probably just use this item here. Or actually, I am going to spend a little bit more because the quality is going to be better and I'm going to end up keeping this thing or wear this item for much longer because it's better quality and it's worth the extra whatever the amount is because I took this course with University of Phoenix. So I think that aspect is awesome.
Great. Well, we're going to get to the fancy feelings, everybody. So our next piece of news, actually, can you believe this? The sentence that I wrote for this, the next piece of news is one that Brandon has some fancy feelings on.
True.
It's true. The CFP board is tackling financial misinformation. So in a recent note, the group said, in personal finance, the line between reliable financial guidance and potentially misleading content is not always clear. And when it blurs, it can put Americans' financial well-being at risk, which I really applaud them for A, being so eloquent with that, and B, just getting to the point, because let's be honest, that's the truth. The CFP board's survey found that 3/4 of Americans seek out financial information online at least once a week. 2 out of 5 people believe online information is in their best interest, meaning that 3 out of 5 don't, which is interesting. And then 4 out of 5 question the accuracy of the information that they're reading. So, Brandon, fancy feelings.
Well, see, before I dominate this little part here, what are your thoughts? So, CFP board coming out with a social media misinformation campaign. What does that mean to you as a consumer and also someone who's really close to the financial space too?
What I took away from this the most was the last statistic that I was going to mention. So 3 out of 5 people regretted a decision that they made because of financial misinformation. So we're getting to the misinformation is out there, then somebody's making a decision on it. And then afterwards is only feeling like, well, had I done a little bit more research or had I known that so-and-so was a charlatan, I wouldn't have done such a thing. But now I've suffered whatever loss as a result of it. So I think for me, because there isn't necessarily a consequence to the person who puts out the misinformation, it's just really to the user of said information or misinformation. I think that it's important to highlight this whole issue and to show that there are real consequences. So hopefully the people who are doing this, especially knowingly, I mean, I'm sure doing it accidentally is a whole other issue, but especially doing it purposely, this has real consequences.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And that's, I think one reason why I'm so passionate about this topic is that last stat. That's 60% of people, more than half, have regretted that decision because of something on social media. And we even see it's at least in 2024, it might still be on for 2025, but on the IRS Dirty Dozen list, which is where the IRS compiles all sorts of different tax schemes. One of the big ones, again, for sure in 2024, probably still on there, but has been tax misinformation on social media. And so we're seeing this. And again, I think there's both. I think you have some folks that will say at best, ignorance. They don't know yet. And I definitely have a much softer spot and a much more empathetic to those cases. But then there are others that are at a certain point, it's just like, I think you know that what you're saying is not correct, but you're just barreling down on it. And again, I think right now there's just a disconnect there's no consequences. If I just tell everyone to put their money in a particular product because I'm getting paid a bunch and it seems great, then, it must be fine. But then after a while, you'd have to see that those policies aren't working out like how you sold them originally. Right. And there's a certain point that you have to feel, I would think, not good about it. And you start to shift.
So yes, you're right. And it does make you wonder with these people who are perpetually doing it, is it just like the same way that people do scams? Like there is that distance between what you're doing and who you're hurting. And so, it doesn't necessarily bother you, which if that's the case, like stop doing that, please. There are real people. Former recovering reporter, however you want to look at it. The reason that this is so important is because when we used to read the newspaper, I know not that many people do that anymore, but when you look at news online, there's something about your brain that basically says, I read something, so it's true. And instead of looking at it as I need to get like 5 different sources or I need to whatever, it was just, if it was in the newspaper, like a good reporter went through it, they determined that this was true. And so as you keep extrapolating this further out from the source and people of repute, it gets worse and worse. But the fact that it's truth doesn't go away.
Right. Where, yeah, before there used to be places or even publications now, to be fair, that you can go in and for the most part know that, hey, they're going to be posting accurate information. But now with social media, and I mean, we've always had access to the internet, but I think AI and with Chat GPT or Perplexity is, I mean, just like anything, can be a huge pro, but it can also be a huge curse in the sense, in this example, where I'm seeing a lot of stuff, even with specifically the One Big Beautiful Bill, for example, where I know influencers are going on here pretending that they're an expert on this, sometimes even saying, I've read all 1,000 pages, which I know for so many people is just not correct, which it's like, it's fine that you didn't read it, but don't lie for a catchy hook to get people to listen. But then people really don't understand taxes, for example, and ChatGPT alone, and they're just going to regurgitate it. And especially when it comes to a compliant written field like tax, there can be massive implications if you start doing your taxes wrong, or you follow a tax fraud or a tax scheme that some influencer shared. That can have real life penalties. And guess what? The IRS, whenever you say, but XYZ influencer told me on TikTok, guess what they're going to say? That's a bummer. Probably don't follow them anymore. Maybe they'll go after them, maybe not. But in your case, you're screwed and you're going to have to pony up all that money. I think that's one of the issues. And then I'm just really, again, I've always been happy to be a certified financial planner professional. But what specifically the CFP board is doing is they've got this survey online specifically for social media misinformation. The second I found out about it, one, I personally used the tool and probably going to use it a ton because there are so many jokers, would be a nice way to put it, out there, again, whether intentionally or not intentionally, having very, very bad misinformation on social media. And I'm really excited to see what the CFP board is able to do with this, where if they start getting some of these big influencers, because from a psychological perspective, I think as human beings, we oftentimes follow the crowd, we follow the herd. We see someone on social media who has 100, 200, 500. I know people who have over 1 million subscribers on YouTube, Allie, and I don't know them personally, that are even saying, I have a skill set as a marketer, and that's why people take my stuff out of context. And they do it wrong because I have a skill set as a marketer. And I'm like, oh my goodness, you basically have just said you are lying and you are misleading intentionally so that people will click and view your stuff. But people see from the outside, oh, this person, look, they're living the lavish lifestyle. They're always driving around in the Ferraris, the Lambos, the mansions, traveling about the world. So from the outside, it's like, oh, well, this person must know what they're doing. They might even have some designation. Now, to be very clear, the person that I'm referring to is not a certified financial planner professional, but everyone thinks they must be brilliant. They've got all this stuff. But then there's been several strategies, a lot of strategies that, again, are on specifically the Dirty Dozen list from the IRS. And I'm like, what is going on? Like, I don't know if the CFP board is going to be able to start seeing this information when enough people submit it, where they're like, go to the IRS even of like, look, there's this one guy, multiple people actually, but there's these people that are specifically teaching fraud from a tax perspective. Like, what kind of consequences can there be? Because I think that's really what hopefully the CFP board is looking for. And even what I'm looking for, like I said, I have empathy for those that are accidentally doing it, or they're just listening to their upline in their multi-level marketing organization, or even at their firm that happens to sell a particular product and teach them how to sell it in maybe unscrupulous ways. But there has to become a point where each person as a financial professional has to look inward and be like, am I doing what's best for my clients? Have I done independent research on my own? At least for me, and again, all my friends that are in the financial planning space, a lot of the folks that you're working with and talking to as well, want to do what's right for clients and are constantly learning. Like I haven't read all 1,000 pages, but I have spent a lot of time learning about the One Big Beautiful Bill. One, because I'm a geek and I actually enjoy the tax planning side of things, but two, to be able to share the correct information. Like, Allie, the amount of time that I end up spending on some of these more, we'll call it technical posts, is sometimes I'm like, man, am I really wasting my time here? Because I am fact checking, I am triple fact checking, I am like playing devil's advocate before I even post something, because I want to know deep down in my heart. And again, there's going to be a time I'm sure I'm going to get something wrong and not be 100% perfect, because I'm a human being. But I would welcome someone to, one, lovingly point that out, because it's not on purpose. But all my other stuff, I spend so much time making sure that to the best of my ability, it's factually accurate, not misleading or any of that. And again, I follow other awesome certified financial planner professionals on social media, and they're doing the same thing. They're doing awesome work. They're sharing. But unfortunately, right now, there's not a ton of CFPs that have massive followings on social media, which is a huge bummer, because I think part of it, you got the regulated industry, and then others were sharing boring, quote unquote, boring stuff oftentimes. like, which is good advice, but
Right.
it's not as sexy, if you will, compared to buy my one product and become a millionaire in 3 years.
Right. Exactly. So lots of stuff to unpack in there, but I was curious, do you feel like as a financial professional, so you said obviously you put a lot of time into your content before you do it because you're taking good care with it, but do you feel like then part of the job or part of the industry's job is to go around and kind of police and then like turn, whether it's comment or whatever it is, on so-and-so who's a snake oil salesperson?
Yeah, I mean, you mean like from the firm perspective?
Well,
Or
even
like who going after
just
people?
so tease to my other podcast, Brand Stories. Matt Halloran was, I believe, quoting Michael Kitces saying that among the things that financial advisors' chief responsibility is content, but because of this financial misinformation, and that if you're not getting out lots of great content, there's really only, like you said, basically this crap that's able to survive because, like you said, it seems like financial advisors are spending too much time with their clients, which is good and important, but then you can't combat the bad stuff. So just curious what you make of all that.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're going to talk to the great financial advisors that would be listening to this, which to be fair is likely that all the advisors that are watching probably going to be the great ones. I think that's a personal preference. I mean, there's great advisors that will never end up doing content in any form because they've already grown their firm and maybe they're comfortable where they're at and don't necessarily have a pull towards content. So I wouldn't necessarily say it's every single person's responsibility, but I do think for those of us that are wanting to grow on social media and share, it's at least a little bit. I mean, that's part of it. And sometimes it feels like trying to fight the good fight of spreading not misinformation and commenting on certain posts. And at least what I try to do too is, because I never want to be disrespectful to someone, even if I know someone's super wrong on a post, and even if I think it might be intentional, me being a jerk to them simply doesn't help. And also, I'm not really as much trying to change their mind, but sometimes I'll see these different posts and I'll make just a helpful comment. Hey, CFP here, just wanted to let you know this is on the IRS 30 dozen list. Please be very careful if you ever implement this strategy. So again, the person that posted it, they could get mad at me if they want, but my goal really is for all the other people scrolling through the comments, see, okay, this is a legit professional. They have their certified financial planner designation. They're not saying never do something like this. They're just pointing out a fact that I should maybe be careful. Yep. And that's kind of how I do it. Because like I said, I'm not trying to get into arguments with these people because oftentimes I think too an issue is not to talk about fee structures, but when there's too many conflicts of interest. If you've been making all of your money selling product A for your entire life, and we're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars a year potentially, at what point are you like, even when you know it's not right, when do you switch? Because now if you switch, you have to do a couple things. Admit that you've been wrong. And you've been wrong for however many years. That's a pretty big ego hit. And two, what does your future income do? Now, there's an integrity part too, and where I'd hope people would have the integrity to make that decision. But I also know that there's that inherent conflict of they could just make way more money by selling this crap to people than being integrous. So like now you've got even starting to get into the morality question here on some of these things. And you've got human nature and you've got greed and you've got all these different things. So I don't know how we fully combat it, but I think what the CFP board is doing here, I think is awesome. I'm just excited to be a part of it as much as I can and see where they take it. Because if we can, again, I don't necessarily need people quote unquote shut down, but I just want people to realize, like you mentioned, Allie, there's consequences to this content. Like when people are sharing this content that they just got off ChatGPT, or sometimes intentionally share it incorrectly, people can actually get hurt with that. People's financial futures could be wrecked. When people are saying, even take advantage of the match inside your 401k, buy my product instead, that is horrible advice 99% of the time. And it's like, oh, I just get so frustrated. But yeah, that's where all my fancy feelings come. And I'm trying to out there fight the good fight too. And I know the fact that the CFP board is even, I would say, going above and beyond as an organization having this survey. I think it's awesome. And again, just another one of the many reasons why I'm proud to be a certified financial planner professional. So again, kudos to the CFP board. We brag on them a lot, but it's because it's deserving and they're doing awesome work for the entire public as a whole, as well as the financial professionals that proudly use the marks.
Yes. And I'm glad that I work with a CFP professional, so thank you for that. I was going to say, when you were prefacing, is there a solution to any of this? At first, my answer was, well, isn't it just everybody should have their own financial advisor? But then arguably to your point, yes, but in the case of some of these ones who are just selling product versus, so I guess it's have a financial advisor who's a fiduciary. And if we all had one of those, we wouldn't care about this stuff.
Yeah. I mean, I think that can help, but even the word fiduciary gets thrown around so much. Like, honestly, Allie, anytime someone asks me if I'm a fiduciary in a meeting, I know one thing for sure. They Googled what questions to ask a financial advisor, because no one really knows what fiduciary means. All these different firm types, I mean, people are just going to say yes. I mean, there's not really a way to fact check it necessarily either. So people can just be lying even in saying fiduciary. But I mean, I think working with a financial professional who genuinely cares about their clients, that's the most important part. Like, I would even say they don't have to necessarily even have, again, I just bragged on them, they don't even necessarily have to have the CFP designation. Now, I think it helps, and it very much shows a high level of commitment to the financial planning space and wanting to get better. So I think it's absolutely preferred. I don't think it's, if you don't have a CFP, there's still some good advisors out there that are doing that. I mean, I think at the core of it, it's a human problem. And how do we fix human greed, the desire for power, money? That's a different conversation. And I think that it really trickles down from there, unfortunately, other than maybe what we could do with having some consequences on seeing people get fined or some of their accounts shut down because they're just spewing so much nonsense that they do get shut down. If someone's million subscriber YouTube channel gets shut down, that's going to have a very big impact on their revenue.
Sure. Absolutely. I completely appreciate all those fancy feelings, and I'm glad for what you're doing for the industry. I'm glad for what the CFP board is doing for the industry. Thank you guys for trying to police this. The point that I was going to make, hopefully it would help some of the people who are doing this not to want to do this. So in addition to what you were saying about there's human greed and that people just want to be able to live on an island all by themselves and whatnot. But I would also imagine that a lot of the people who are looking for these financial tips are really probably at their financial wit's end. Just like, I need something to happen because whatever it is, I can't afford rent this month, this, that, whatever it is that's stacking up against them. And so you're looking for something to get you out of this situation. So for anybody who then is going to take that person who's in a very delicate situation to begin with and then make it 10 times worse, there's probably a special place somewhere for you.
Yeah. And that's what I see a lot of too, unfortunately, with a lot of these. Again, not that I'm against fully the MLM structure of all times, but there's a lot of insurance companies that are operating on an MLM strategy. And I see some of these agents, I'll even put that in quotes, that are just talking about how much money you can make in virtual sales, specifically life insurance. Yeah. So that's actually one thing. So if anyone's listening to this, and again, I'm not saying every single person in those organizations is bad necessarily, but the amount of conflicts that are in those where it's way more about how much money the agents are making. Like, if you look at their social media, it's all about their trips and it's not about helping clients. That's a red flag. So yeah, if your advisor is just traveling the world and doing all the flashy stuff, again, certain people, I guess, could resonate with that. And some could be doing that legitimately. But if they're referring to their business as life insurance sales and leadership building or what have you, or they're trying to recruit you after they've just met you, probably want to avoid that one. Again, I'm not saying every single case because I don't like the always and never advice, but I'll give it almost always in that example. That's at least one real detailed practical tip.
I appreciate that. And so at least for now, we are putting a pin in the fancy feelings. We will get back to some more news. Our third piece of news this week is from FINRA. They put out a 2025 industry snapshot. This showed that there were about 8,000 more registered reps last year than there was the year before. So we're now at almost 635,000. There was a slight increase in mid-sized firms and a slight decrease in large firms. Curious to get into that. And then for the last 3 years, more people have joined FINRA than have left it, which I thought was also kind of interesting. But as somebody who is in the industry more deeply than I am, I would love to hear your thoughts.
That last one that you shared, that's very interesting. You said more people have stayed in FINRA than have left. So they're net positive. And I guess the reason that I find that interesting, because effectively I left FINRA whenever I left a large broker dealer where I was a duly registered, where I was technically had my Series 7, which is now since lapsed. And it was interesting. People that are still in the broker dealer world are like, you're going to let that lapse? I'm like, absolutely. I can't even think of hardly any good reason to keep it. If you're out there and still have your 7, that's totally fine. I'm not judging you. But for me, at least, did not make sense for my practice or where it was going. And with that, I mean, we're seeing this what seems like a pretty big shift more to the independence model, the independent RIA. I don't have the data to suggest it's the majority, but at least from my anecdotal evidence, it seems like the majority of independent RIAs typically aren't associated with a broker dealer. If someone's going out on their own, they're likely registering with the state, or even if they're tucking in, like I'm technically an investment advisor representative of a larger RIA, that RIA doesn't have anything to do with FINRA. They're an SEC registered firm. So I did find that the most interesting because the data that I saw too was there's from a BD only perspective, there's 268,000, which I found that really interesting. Cause I'm like, who only has basically their Series 6 or their Series 7? Like who's only selling A-share mutual funds for clients and not really doing much of a wrapped account situation. So I thought that was interesting compared to investment advisor only, which is technically what I would be, only 77,000, at least according to their report. So substantially less, which I found very interesting. So like, there's maybe some one-off cases that you could say that you would need to use more of the Series 7 for, but not a lot. So how are there so many people with just a Series 7? So yes, I just found that interesting.
I mean, like you're saying, it seems like there are so many shifts in the industry, and so number of people being greater in versus out. I also found that interesting because I feel like every day we hear advisors are sunsetting. We're going to have the biggest retirement in the next 10, 15 years of advisors. We don't have enough to fill. It seems like to a certain extent the data isn't necessarily showing that, but maybe I just don't have enough data to know.
I mean, yeah, we keep hearing that. It's like a broken record in the industry. All advisors, the average age seems to keep going up. I think it's in the 50s, the last that I've checked, and it's not going down. And I think a lot of it is because advisors aren't actually retiring. People expected, they're going to retire maybe at these more normal ages, but they're not retiring. And I don't blame advisors for that. Let's say they're even 70 years old, say that they're still in relatively good physical health, and they're sharp mentally. At that point, they're likely making a good amount of money every single year, working with basically their best friends at this point, still probably have the full autonomy and flexibility to do the travel, do the golf, spend time with grandkids or whatever is important to them. And they're making great money doing it. So why would they leave that if they, still have all their faculties and their health when they get to enjoy their life, so easily have a purpose by running their firm or working with their clients? I think for a lot of advisors, it's almost going to be a forced retirement at a certain point where they feel like they just physically don't have the energy or the capacity to do it anymore. Because from a lifestyle perspective, most people are like, I can't wait till I retire. I know for me, I'm only 30, but I also am not like, I'm super gung-ho to retire. And we're seeing it in the industry. People just aren't doing it. And like I said, I don't blame them. But at some point, they have to. It will have to happen at some point. When? Who knows? But at some point.
I guess. But so to that point, Brandon, so then does that mean that when you are 70 and I am 80, you will still be working with me because we will be good friends and that's just what we're doing? Because if that's the case, you can keep going till, like you said, your cognition isn't there anymore, which hopefully will be never.
Yeah, exactly. No, like I said, who knows how I'll feel in 30 or 40 years from now? Because as human beings, we're just really bad at associating with our future selves, which is why oftentimes long-term financial planning can be quite the challenge for many people. But yeah, I absolutely love what I get to do. And I don't know what else would I be doing? Like, I just don't know. So at least as of right now, I'll tell you that's my plan. Like, could it change in 40 years? Yes, it could, but that's at least my plan for now.
I was expecting you to do more mountain biking, but then I'm also imagining like at 70, I don't know, how's the mountain biking going?
Yeah, that's gonna be tougher. It's gonna definitely shift more to golf. I think at that point, my dad's still rocking on the mountain bike in his early mid 50s, and he's crushing it. But he's still many years away even from 70 as well. There's some motor guys out there, but maybe just doing less jumps and maybe less injury prone mountain bike trails probably.
Got it. Anyways, our last piece of news this week features AtoZ Communications Network member Composition Wealth. So the firm added 2 teams, one of which is in Silicon Valley and the other one is in Columbus, Ohio, to its firm. It's also, as a firm, nearing the $10 billion mark. What I found interesting here, so Columbus, Ohio, I feel like a lot of firms announce we're in Chicago, we're in California, we're in New York. And then as you get more of these, I don't mean to be mean as a New Yorker, but like more obscure places, it's just like, you know what, that's great. I'm glad that there's more high quality services in somewhere that needs it.
Yeah, I think specifically with Columbus, so I grew up in West Virginia, only about 2 hours from Columbus. And even if I'll go back, not where I graduated college from, but where I grew up, like if I were to visit my grandma, I'll have to fly into Columbus actually to then drive 2 hours. But I have seen Columbus or advertisements on even out here in California to, hey, move to Columbus because at least for a while, cost of living is relatively low. You've got your big city amenities. Now growing up close to it, I'd be like, well, you also get a lot of grayness for like the first quarter of the year where you barely see the sun and it's kind of cold and dreary. Again, no offense to anyone living in Columbus. I lived in West Virginia and it was relatively similar for that time. So, I mean, there's some reasons, to be fair, why the cost of living might be slightly lower. But again, you still do get a lot of the big city amenities. And so I'm not surprised that a larger firm is announcing that they're going to have a home base there, because I'm sure a lot of business can be done. They've got an easy airport to fly into and out of. So that wasn't as shocking, again, especially because I have legitimately seen commercials for encouraging people, hey, come check out what we've got to offer. And one of it, low cost of living. And compared to obviously where you are in New York and me in California, and if someone gets at their wits' end, say they don't have family close to them anymore, it's like, hey, maybe I will move and save a bunch of money and have a decent quality of life. And there, there's access to good healthcare and finance there too.
Exactly. Among the reasons that I also resonate really well with Composition Wealth, they rebranded themselves this year. And the thought behind the Composition Wealth was basically that we've all got our financial stories to tell. The client stories are all part of Composition Wealth story. They're all chapters together, part of your financial life. There's each chapter that we go through. So that really resonated. And I think that I'm encouraged to see more of that language, that people are embracing like from our first piece of news, the financial wellness, that's going to be a category and something hopefully that people are searching more for so that they can find the good information and not the crap information.
Right.
So yes, just glad to hear that kind of messaging out there.
Yeah, agreed. I think, again, more and more, again, we'll call these good firms, are really leaning with human first wealth management is a super big buzzword. But when it's actually done in practice, when clients can feel like when their advisor truly cares about them and is making decisions based on their values and their situation and their goals, again, I think everyone wins. The firms are going to grow faster because they're going to get way more referrals because they're delivering a much more tailored and just loving, we'll call it, client experience. And obviously the end consumer benefits too, because they're getting a much better experience that's beyond just, hey, we're really great at managing money and that's it. It's like, no, we're really great at managing money. Hopefully they're doing some sort of holistic, comprehensive financial planning as well. But also they do a lot of that life planning, the soft side too, which is, for a while, was very underrated. I think it still is pretty underrated. Again, we get outside of our echo chamber. I still think a lot of it is about the dollars and the cents and just about the assets for a lot of firms maybe out there. But for the ones that are leading the charge with this, again, I think they're just going to continue to grow because they're going to do a better job servicing the client. And if a client just simply feels like a number, there's a lot of other advisors that will be more than happy to more deeply serve them, genuinely care about them. And I think they're going to take those clients eventually.
Yeah. Well, that might be a nice message to end on, that basically, especially when it comes to financial misinformation, people should not be a number. Don't become one of the numbers of the people who buy into this schlock. Please do your research and work with a financial professional who you trust.
Yep. Amen.